I just pressed the let's go live button, and so we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. We can't start rambling off here before the tubes connect themselves. And hopefully it's not as much of a ramble as usual today. We've got some business to attend to. Is it working? It is. That's tremendous. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we are talking about the Donald Trump trial, paying special attention to what's happening in Washington, D.C. out of the January 6th case. A whole slew of filings today, and in particular, I want to pay attention to the speedy trial provisions under the law and about timing. We've got a lot of timing questions here. We know that we are smack dab in the middle of an election season. Donald Trump has already declared. Joe Biden has already declared. Joe Biden is prosecuting Donald Trump, who is his chief opponent, the current leader of the Republican field. And so we're asking ourselves, when is this trial going to happen? When is the judge going to force this to all come out to fruition? And we now know that Jack Smith is urging this to be taking place in December. And you're going to see in the media a lot of people using the January date. And the January date is certainly when opening arguments might be, but they're going to be selecting the jury according to this schedule in December. And I think they're using the January date to make it feel like it's a little bit further out. It's not. Remember, they just filed this case in August. And so they're trying to cram this thing through with jury selection and get that done by early December. So we'll go through that. Donald Trump and his team are saying, hey, wait a minute. You guys have had 3.5 years to investigate all this stuff, and now you want us to go to trial in like 5 months? Are you guys nuts? So we'll see what they said about it. And then there's a very odd thing that's happening. While Jack Smith is encouraging this trial to take place very quickly and immediately, they're also notifying us that there might be some classified documents in the January 6th case. And that's a very curious thing. Where are these classified documents coming from? We thought that these were only limited to the Florida case, but no, now we've got classified documents, which means we've got Classified Information Procedures Act compliance, and we know that that's going to complicate things as we saw in the Florida case. So they're simultaneously telling us that they want a trial in December, but we've also got a classified documents problem in the J6 case as well. What? All right, we'll get to that. Then, shout out to our friend Techno Fog over on Twitter. He put together a very nice thread on the judge, who is Judge Chutkan. Actually went through some of her background, some of her history, and found where there was a discrepancy or two between how she's handling this case and how she handled other cases. In other words, one seems like it's being treated with a little bit more scrutiny than some of the others. So we'll go through that. Techno Fog does very nice work. And so we'll see what he has to say on Twitter. If you're not already following him, he does good work over there. Then we are going to turn our attention. Remember, January 6th and all of this Trump insurrection stuff was done on the back of the election, right? It all stood up from the election. We had questions about the election and how fraudulent it was. And now we see that there was a lot more fraud than they ever let on. Remember that stupid phrase they kept saying over and over and over again? They kept telling us stupid things like, well, 15 days to slow the spread and all that stuff. And then they came out with this dumb phrase saying no proof of widespread fraud. Remember that? No widespread fraud. No evidence of widespread fraud, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out that's not exactly true, because in Michigan, there was, in fact, a police report that alleges that there was some very serious criminality taking place that is voter fraud related. And we're talking about 10,000 or so ballots, if not much more than that. And this was a report that came over from the Gateway Pundit. They got an exclusive on this. Shout out to the Gateway Pundit. Great reporting over there. And we'll jump in from them. We'll see exactly what they have to share with us before we go through the police reports with a little bit more scrutiny. And this is very curious, because the way I'm thinking about this is, though this is like a kind of death by 1,000 cuts. They've got all these little voter fraud terror cells, these little individual cells that are located in these states engaging in this type of behavior. And they're so decentralized, they're so distributed all across the country that you can't aggregate them. You can't compile them all up such that you can bring a claim that would make and match that second part of all the election law litigation cases, which is it has to be enough to overcome the margin of difference, the margin of the votes. It has to be enough to change the outcome of the election is the language. But if they're all decentralized, they're all in different jurisdictions, in different states, and they're all doing small little incremental attacks like 10,000 votes here, 10,000 votes there, you can see how this can add up pretty quickly and deviate an entire election. So we'll go through that in detail. And there's small margins in other states. Arizona, 10,000, Georgia, 11,000, Wisconsin, 20,000. So we'll see what all that's about. And then, of course, we got a Biden update. There's some fun stuff happening here. We've got James Comer, who is saying, guess who's getting a subpoena, courtesy of the congressional Republicans? Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. A lot of other people have been getting subpoenas and requests to come in and testify. We've already heard from Devon Archer. My understanding is we're going to hear from some other business associates from the Biden crime family. And Comer says that they're not done. Eventually, the Biden family themselves are going to be getting subpoenas. And I can't wait to see what that looks like and what a mess that's going to be. We got another letter from Ted Cruz. He's a senator, of course, Lion Ted, we'll call him today, but Lion, if you hear me say it. So he is sending a letter to somebody who I think needs a letter yeah, I put the wrong clip in there. He sent a letter to David Weiss. And so you can see here, we're going to just fix this right here. Gosh, just totally embarrassed, So we'll just fix this here, copy and paste that, hopefully get that cleared away. All right, now the show can continue. All right, now we're back on track here. All right, Ted Cruz, sent a letter over to David Weiss, the prosecutor who's investigating so-called Hunter Biden, and specifically has questions about Lesley Wolf, the same woman who evidently notified Hunter's defense, his legal team, about a possible investigation into their storage facility, which is where they probably had all their crack and hookers. So we got to go through that. Then we have Elizabeth Warren. She gets asked a question about all this from Jake Tapper. They're like, do you have anything to say about this, Liz? And she's like, well, I'd like to talk about anything except this topic. So let me talk about my history in Congress. And she changes the subject quite rapidly. And then we'll wrap up the day with a fun clip from Peter Doocey. We watched this one this morning on our locals, and it was fun. But then they've had a follow-up to this because they asked John Kirby about this. So Doocey runs into Joe Biden, and he says, hey, Mr. Biden, Mr. President, do you have any comments on Devon Archer and his testimony that you're involved with your son's business? And so Joe Biden answers that. And then John Kirby hops on Fox News and explains away that Joe Biden is, in fact, answering all our questions about this very complex topic. And so, my friends, as you can see, we've got a lot to get to today. We had a beautiful members-only morning stream this morning. So shout out to our members who joined us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We love our morning streams where we hit the headlines. We take a look at what's going on the various dockets, including the Trump docket, the presidential schedule. When Congress is in session, we see what they're up to. Our members have a members-only private Telegram group. So if you join us on YouTube, that's where you can join us in the after party. We'd love to have our members. We also have a brand new website where you can go and you can click this reports section and get the various reports on all the content we cover here. RobertGouveia.com is the web address, and you can read the stuff if you'd rather read than watch. You're also available. You can get the mind map. So everything that we're about to cover today is included in the mind map, and you can sign up to get access to that, along with a video tutorial of how to use the mind map, and it's a lot of fun stuff. So RobertGouveia.com, brand new out of the oven. We're constantly working on improving it. We appreciate your feedback and comments as we build this puppy out. And so thanks for going over there. And we also want to be healthy. Before we get into all of this news, we got to make sure we eat our greens, because we all would like to tighten up around the midsection, lose some of that, leftover weight that we can kind of carry around here from time to time. But, we've all heard all these ads and these fads are going around, these weight loss pills, diets, all this stuff. And we know that a lot of them, they just don't work. And you know why? Because they're not eating healthy. And if you eat healthy, especially 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day, well, you imagine that the weight would probably just fall right off. But look, I know vegetables and fruit, it's a lot of work, and got to cut them and splice them and wash them and dry them. It's like, good Lord already. So instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula, very specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. If you just go over there, take a look at the label, you'll see exactly what I mean. And it's the only brand backed by a better health promise. So if you check it out, you're going to look and feel healthier fast, but then you're going to recognize when you go to your doctor's office and he walks in or she looks at you and she says, "Oh my goodness, you look fantastic." It's because you're going to look so good. Why? Field of Greens. She's going to say, "Wow, you've lost weight, whatever you're doing, keep it up." And so let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com and enter code Robert when you load up your cart with all the goodies. And there's a lot of good stuff there. Check it out. Fieldofgreens.com, 15% with code Robert. And remember, the vegetables, they want to be eaten. That's why they're here. They love it. That's their whole basis for existing. You can make their dreams come true by buying Field of Greens. All right. And I think I had a very beautiful email. Somebody sharing with us a Field of Greens mashed potato recipe. And I think they said, didn't turn out so good. Don't think I'd share it. But here's a picture for you, just so you know. I said, yeah, that's amazing. It's kind of a funny one. All right. So anyways, let's get to it. Now, we've got the prosecutions. Jack Smith, Trump prosecutor, wants a very speedy trial. Filed a motion with the D.C. court telling them that we can get this thing done quickly and that America needs to get it done quickly because we've got such a public interest in seeing Trump prosecuted. Now, we long suspected that they wanted this done in this fashion because it's electoral interference. It's them waging their campaign against their political enemy. They know Joe Biden is hardly competent, so this is the only thing that they can do. They're moving pieces around. There's no coincidence that we've got 4 different indictments that are percolating all right now. They all launched at the same time, just like you move pieces around on the chessboard. So today, we're talking about timing and speedy trial rules. And I know it might sound boring, but it's actually pretty simple and it's quite important because they're trying to nestle this thing in right before the end of the year. In December, when jury selection is when they want to have this all start. And so today, let's go through this various paperwork filed from the court. And we're starting with Trump's filing because he's asking for something that is sometimes unusual in a criminal case. Oftentimes people think of the defendant, the person who's been charged with a crime, as the person who wants to exercise their right to a speedy trial. Because if a defendant is sitting around in custody, you can think about the Count of Monte Cristo when Edmond Dantes is locked away forever and there's no speedy trial for years and years and years. And that's his name, right? It is Edmond Dantes. So he is locked away forever. And then that turns into a violation of his due process. And so we want to say we can't allow that to happen in this country. So we're going to make sure that it happens quickly, right? Trial happens within a certain period of time so you're not locked away in a dungeon for 400 years. So they say that the defendant wants to exercise that right, but sometimes the defendant can waive that right. Sometimes the defendant can exclude that time. So let's say if you've got 70 days to bring a trial, the defense can say, okay, yeah, I want my 70 days. I want my trial in 70 days. Why? Because the defense might be able to say, well, they're not going to have all their evidence in 70 days. They're not going to have their blood results or their DNA evidence or their witnesses are not going to be available. And so there's a tactical strategy as to why a defendant would want their trial to go quickly. But there's often other times when the defendant doesn't want that time. They say, no, we don't care about 70 days. Well, make it 270 days for all we care. And in criminal law, we're always calculating the days. That's why you always have an end of trial date so we can calculate the time between the arraignment, the initial court date, and the time between the trial. We want to literally count the days. How many days? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It gets a little complicated. So this is Donald Trump now saying, we want to exclude time. Okay, don't count this against us. We're perfectly happy just sitting here charged as a defendant. We're not trying to go quickly here. And so this is from Trump's lawyer, short filing. This submitted by John Lauro, and it is telling us the following. It is the motion to exclude the time. So in other words, we're not counting the time against us. And they want 25 days to go. The time between the initial appearance and August 28th, which is the first status conference, which we haven't even hit yet, says, please exclude that. This is Trump's lawyer. Why? They say it's warranted. This is a very complicated case. The complexity of this matter. There's also a substantial volume of discovery. We also have novel questions of facts and law. No kidding. Never happened before. President Trump, they say, is charged with 4 counts. Wrongfully alleging conspiracies spanning months involving hundreds of potential witnesses across the country. The prosecution states that this case will, quote, involve a substantial amount of discovery. But additionally, Trump's lawyers say, this matter raises significant constitutional issues and other novel questions of law. We anticipate reviewing terabytes of data and hundreds of thousands of pages of hard copy documents. We intend to file numerous critical motions. We're going to interview hundreds of witnesses. We're going to issue dozens of Rule 17 subpoenas, and we're going to retain witnesses, expert witnesses, etc. That's a lot of work. So they say under the law, a court can exclude periods of delay from the 70-day window under the law, the Speedy Trial Act, which a criminal trial must commence. And some of the reasons why the judge can exclude that time is the following: whether the case is so unusual or so complex due to the nature of the prosecution or the existence of novel questions of law that it is unreasonable to expect adequate preparation for pretrial proceedings within the time limits established by this section. So, is this so unusual or complex? Does this bring in new novel questions of law that 70 days, or let's say December, would cause this to be inadequate, unreasonable to expect Trump's team to be prepared? Obviously. I mean, they've spent years since January 6th. And Merrick Garland has come out and said, this is the most extensive investigation the DOJ has ever done. Really? You got 1,000 riot charges, and half of those have already pled out. Many of those are nonviolent. Most of them are nonviolent, the vast majority. Okay. Here, the sheer number of witnesses, this is Trump's team speaking, and the volume of discovery alone, it warrants a continuance. So we get more time, and the time doesn't count. To say nothing about the issues of first impression that we're going to have to brief. Okay. Never had a president before. Never had charges like this against somebody who's running for office, who was the president, who was in a position of power to ask his people to investigate certain things. Where are the bounds between free speech and criminal action that they're just making up? All of these are going to be new and novel. Never been a case like this before that we can compare it to. For a case of this magnitude, Trump's lawyers say it would be impossible for the defense to evaluate the government's evidence, prepare its own defense, and participate in pretrial proceedings, all within the time constraints that are in place here. And so accordingly, the ends of justice would be served by the exclusion of the 25-day period from the Speedy Trial Act calculation. So we know we've got 70 days, so just delete, and we know it's been here from August 3rd all the way till August 28th. Just subtract 25 days from our 75. Or, in other words, exclude that from the calculation. Don't hold those 25 days against the 70. They don't count on the clock. So Lauro says, the prosecution requested that we include this when we file this. They said, hey, make sure you tell the judge this. And they filed it in an email, probably snarky as heck. Says the government's position is that the ends of justice are best served by a speedy trial. This is your prosecutor speaking. The government will respond more specifically once we've reviewed the motion. So they said, all right, we'll copy and paste that and throw that in there, you dorks. And then they signed off on it, sent it in, counsel for President Donald Trump. So that gets sent over, and it makes sense, okay? From our perspective, as a defendant, you go, yeah. How many dozens, if not hundreds of lawyers did they put on this case? Terabytes of data, hundreds of thousands of pages of documents. We want at least as much time as they got. And let's not forget that the government has exponentially more resources than the defense ever will, ever. They've got the entire DOJ, the entire FBI, dozens of U.S. attorneys, if not hundreds of them, working on this day and night. We saw in previous filings that you've got these attorneys who are sitting there on Saturdays and Sundays, just scraping over Trump's True Social posts to see if he might offend them. And so that was the original filing, the motion to exclude time. But the government doesn't want that to happen really at all. In fact, they want this trial to happen immediately. They want all the time included. And so they responded as follows. This one's 8 pages. They say, all right, this is the government's response to a prior minute order. They say, hey, Judge, you asked us before to file a brief telling you about a proposed trial date. Here's what we've got. They say, the government proposes that trial begin on January 2nd, 2024. So that's what they say their trial date is. Trial begin on January 2nd, 2024. And they say that from that date, it's going to take no longer than 4 to 6 weeks. And I believe we've got at least Iowa primaries very early. So Iowa's, I believe, in January, and then we've got some other primaries right after that. But the reason I say this would start in December is because I've already seen this date, which is where in December, they're going to pick the jury. And as we know here, once the jury is impaneled and sworn, that's when jeopardy attaches in a criminal trial. So unless the jury is sworn in on this date, I'm imagining that they pick the jury, get them sworn, get them impaneled, then give them the break for the holidays, and then they come back for the actual trial in January. So I think what they're trying to do is be very sneaky here, personally. Oh, the trial starts in January. Not really. You've got to start picking your jury. You're doing your voir dire. You've got all of your stuff prepped. You know basically where you're going. Of course, you'll continue to prep between December and January, and you'll just in trial you're prepping the day after the trial, the night after, the morning of, and all the stuff. So very, very curious that they're doing it this way. But if they pick the jury and they swear the jury in, and then they give them a break, that's when I would catch the start date. So this stuff is starting very quickly. So they say, this is why they need it. They say this trial date and the proposed schedule outlined below would give the defendant, Trump, time to review the discovery in this case and prepare a defense, and it would allow the court and the parties to fully litigate any pretrial issues. The prosecutors say, most importantly, a January 2nd trial date would vindicate the public's, that's apparently us, our strong interest in a speedy trial. Do you want a speedy trial? We have a strong interest in this. They're speaking for us. This is our government. An interest guaranteed by the Constitution and federal law in all cases, but of particular significance here. Why? Because Trump, a former president, is charged with conspiring to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election, obstruct the results, and discount citizens' legitimate votes. So to me, this reads as though this case is a little bit special, right? This case is an aberration. They're making this claim that, there's other constitutional and federal case law that says we should move these things along quickly here, just in general. The public has a general interest in not having a slow, bureaucratic, incompetent government. I would agree with that. So they make that same argument here. Now, in practice, of course, we know how that actually works. But then they say it's actually not routine. So it is guaranteed in regular all cases, but this is a special case because it's a former president, which they acknowledge this is a big deal, and it's got some pretty serious charges. Wow. So that's their justification as to why it should go quickly, which enables the counterpoint, which that it should go slowly because it is such a big case. It is such a critical slate of issues. So the government says 4 to 6 weeks. They say to estimate a prompt trial date that serves everybody's interest, like the public's interest and Trump's rights and abilities to prepare for the trial. The government outlines the following dates. And let's come back to this because we're going to notice that this feels a lot simpler than some other schedules we've seen. So on September 25th, they tell us Rule 12, other dispositive motions to Rule 12 stuff. Rule 12, motions, hearings, motions in limine, which are the preliminary motions that you file to limit or preclude testimony or to stop people from testifying a certain way, then oppositions, then replies in support of motions in limine, and then final pretrial conference. So pretty quick schedule. Then we're into trial by January. Now, in the Florida case, in the Florida documents case, we went through the schedule in that matter, and we saw that it was a lot more complicated. Many additional pages. Why? Because there were classified documents. But I don't see any classified document stuff in this schedule. We'll return. The general schedule would give the defense almost 2 months. Wow, almost 2 months after the original indictment to file motions, raise legal issues, and not issues which raise legal issues, not issues of fact stemming from the review of the discovery. It would then provide roughly 5 months before the start of trial for the defense to review the discovery. The government expects to substantially complete in advance of August 28th. So substantially complete, but not even be done with. This schedule also proposes that the court set a certain start trial in January, regardless of when jury selection finishes in December, to avoid uncertainty and hardships for jurors during the winter holidays. Okay. So it sounds like they're going to be sworn in and impaneled in December. But then they're going to actually start their version of the trial, which is just, oral argument, opening arguments, back in January. The government's trial date, they say it vindicates the public interest. It says it represents an appropriately speedy trial. We've undertaken extensive efforts to prepare and organize the discovery that's going to assist Trump in his review of the materials. And they always make this point, and I absolutely can't stand it. Look, thank you, government, for your index. Thank you for labeling what you think is important to the defense. We've undertaken extensive efforts to prepare. We don't really give a rip about what you've done, your extensive efforts. Give us all the files because we're going to look it over again. I mean, yeah, they should be in folders and they should be organized, right, in a way that is like. Sometimes what they'll do is the opposite of this. Sometimes they'll just take like they did this in the Proud Boys case, where they just dropped in like 50,000 pages of stuff, and he needed like 2 pages, and like, here's 50,000 pages. So they can do it the other way too, right? They can be vindictive about it. But then they go the other way, and they say that we've gone through extensive efforts, and so you don't get enough time because we've done the work for you. They try to play it both ways. And thanks for doing all the work for us, but that doesn't mean that you get to take away from our time because you said that you gave us a summary. Assuming that a protective order is entered, the government expects to have substantially completed the discovery by August 28th. Now, there's a confidential classified documents problem here that they're just leaving out of this filing. And they're noting this. They're saying, hey, by the way, Judge, John Lauro, he's already preparing his defense. He talked about it when he was on CBS. They say it appears that the defense counsel is already planning which motions they're going to file. We haven't even given them discovery, and they're already going to file it anyways. So they don't actually need more time. See, he went on CBS. He said we're identifying and litigating a number of motions that we're going to bring First Amendment claims on, saying Trump is immune from being prosecuted. So they're saying, see, Judge, so that way just delete more time. They don't need it anyways. And this time will ensure that Trump gets a fair and speedy trial. So they give us some law here. They say that the Speedy Trial Act is meant to protect the defendant, but they say also it's to protect the public. The public has an interest in prompt criminal trials. Yeah, because we don't want citizens locked under improper prosecutions by political hacks. Consistent with the Speedy Trial Act, they've accorded significant weight to the public interest. And they say here, it's difficult to imagine a public interest stronger than this one, in which Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, is charged with 3 fake criminal conspiracies intended to undermine the federal government, obstruct the certification, and disenfranchise voters. The D.C. Circuit has said that there is a direct linkage between Trump and the events of January 6th. And the D.C. Circuit, so this court, okay, so the government, this is so gross. We live in such a bizarre timeline. It's like we're watching the Republic just crumble in front of us. The D.C. Circuit, so the government prosecutors are referencing back to the same court. And the court has already said, because this D.C. Circuit has been prosecuting the J6ers for years now, and they've been some of the most hyperbolic, dramatic whiners you've ever heard out of any proceeding ever. So other judges that they're referencing and citing to now, they say the other judges have already described Trump as being a direct link between the attack on the Capitol. And they also described it as the single most deadly attack on the Capitol by domestic forces in the history of the United States. It's very dramatic. Very dramatic. By domestic forces. Okay. So trial in this case, they say, is clearly a matter of public importance. During the initial appearance, they say that Trump's lawyers argued that a principal reason for delaying this trial is so Trump can review the discovery. They say it's perplexing then that the defense has refused to accept the discovery that the government has ready, even though there's on an interim basis under the proposed protective order. Well, of course, they're not going to take it and just an acquiesce to your protective order. They say you should just take it and then we'll litigate the protective order after the fact. And if you don't like the protective order, you can change it after the fact. And the defense is saying, no, we're not doing that. We're not going to start processing anything until we know what the terms are of processing the things. In any event, although there is a large amount of discovery in this case, including witness interviews, grand jury transcripts, evidence obtained through numerous sealed search warrants, the government has gone to great lengths to organize the materials for Trump to assist him in his review. So again, it's hilarious. Thank you for organizing it. You mean the corrupt Department of Justice, along with the FBI, that has been prosecuting this man since he came down the escalator in 2016? They put some sticky notes on the files or something, and now it's like all good? Wow, thank you. Well, it's alphabetical. Wow, you even have a plastic cover sheet on this one. Congratulations. Nobody cares, FBI. These efforts, or DOJ, the efforts include providing him a compilation of certain key evidence on which the indictment relies and identifying material potentially favorable to the defense. Oh, like exculpatory material, like you're supposed to do? Thanks for that. It's called Brady. Indeed, assuming that a protective order is entered, by the time of the court's hearing, the government expects that its production and discovery will be substantially complete, but not fully complete. The government would then continue to produce the discovery on a rolling basis. And they say, we're prepared at this moment to produce the majority of the discovery. As soon as you enter this protective order, we're going to give them everything, including the following: grand jury transcripts and associated exhibits, witness recordings, agent notes. And again, they don't want Trump to be able to talk about any of this. This is why they want the protective order in place before they give it to them. Trump wants to take all of it and say, hey, look what they've got. Look at this discovery, and start sharing some bits and pieces about this. And they want to be able to slap him on it when he talks about recordings or transcripts, search warrants, grand jury subpoenas, also unredacted materials from other government entities, including the January 6th fake illegally constituted select committee. And they don't want him to disclose any of that. That's why they're fighting over this protective order. The government went to great lengths to organize these materials in a user-friendly manner, prepare them in formats ready to be loaded into a document review platform, and they created detailed logs to guide the defendant's review, which is all stuff they should be doing as a matter of course anyways. They've already got evidence systems. This is all stuff they should be doing already. And they're saying that this justifies less time for Trump. They say in a separate filing today, look at this. See how dishonest they are? In a separate filing today, which we'll take a quick look at, the government is requesting that the court schedule a pretrial hearing for SIPA, the Classified Information Procedures Act. Why? So that the parties can discuss a parallel schedule with respect to the minimal amount of classified info that may be subject to discovery in this case. So they not only do they want a trial to start in December with jury selection, they also want this to proceed aggressively, quickly, with incomplete discovery that is substantially complete, that they can then work on a rolling basis. So Trump's hands are tied. He gets what he gets when they give it to him. And there's a parallel process for the classified document. So Trump really can't see much of anything. He gets this initial tranche, then the classified stuff, he's got to go through a parallel process. And as we know, with the Florida case, that's going to take a very long time. Judge already bumped that trial out to May of next year because of the classified documents problem. So they're still asking for December, but they want this sort of Expedited Classified Information Procedures Act to also go quickly. So they're asking for an expedited scheduling, while in a footnote notifying the court there's classified materials, because that means Trump's people are going to have to get clearances, just like they're doing in Florida. The government will move separately to provide the court ex parte and under seal, which means they're not notifying Trump's team and they're not telling any of us about it, a draft copy of the detailed production letter and the source logs that they're going to give to the defense. The materials demonstrate the scope of the discovery that's readily available for review. They say the government's also going to provide a compilation of key evidence that supports charges in the indictment, including a detailed 45-page speaking indictment that provides a roadmap to the government's theories and identifies certain material within discovery that is arguably favorable to the defendant. Okay, great. Thank you for doing all of that. But we still get the same amount of time. We don't get to just subtract months off of our proceedings because you did some homework that you think is important. We think you're idiots because you brought this case in the first place. So we don't really think what your arguments are. We would imagine that you're going to provide us with a list of arguments, and in that list of arguments, you're going to have probably a list of rebuttal arguments. So we're going to come up with our own arguments. Thanks. The government stands ready to provide technical assistance or answer any questions. They say that Trump's lawyers have claimed, both in media interviews and initial hearings, that the government has been investigating this matter for 3.5 years, while the defense is starting with a blank slate. They dunk on this one a little bit. They say, not only is this claim impossible because January 2021 was only 2.5 years ago, but it's disingenuous. Well, I think what they're probably arguing is that they went back in their investigation prior to 2021, January 6th. So you're being disingenuous here. You're misframing their arguments. Typical. The defendant has been aware of and responded forcefully in opposition to certain information made public through the hearings. Been aware of and responded forcefully in opposition to certain relevant information made public. I don't really know where this sentence goes. Furthermore, Trump and his counsel have long been aware of details of the government's investigation leading to his indictment. Okay. And they had first contact with the government in June 2022. At his initial appearance, Trump was accompanied by an attorney who was familiar, and he's got a greater understanding of this than most other defendants. He's got multiple lawyers, and they've been representing him for a long time. And so that's why this is a perfect time. It's going to afford Trump many months to review the discovery, raise pretrial issues, and prepare his defense. No additional time is even necessary or warranted under the Speedy Trial Act because the public has a strong interest in it. Other courts have administered justice similarly. 5 months for co-defendant, 32-count co-defendant who blew up the World Trade Center, right? So Trump's like a World Trade Center bomber. 6 months between the arrest of that one. Nice. Yeah, sounds about right. So in addition, over the past 2 years, courts in districts have managed a lot of cases. The fair and efficient administration of justice pales in comparison to other challenges. This number is so pathetic. It took them 2 years to process 1,000 cases. It's like a joke. 500 cases a year in a federal court for like trespassing and disorderly conduct crimes. It's all fake. This is all fake. These numbers are inconsequential. You can have a Super Bowl with 1,000 disorderly conduct-ish type of crimes in a Super Bowl weekend. Take a look at how many criminal felonies are prosecuted by a city government like New York City. How many felonies do they process in 1 year? Take a look at that number. See if it's more than 500 a year. See if it's more than 500 a year. You'll be surprised. It is. The fair and efficient administration of Trump's single criminal case pales in comparison to that challenge of 500 cases a year, most of which were nonviolent. So they say, conclusion, the government's proposed trial date represents an appropriate balance between Trump's right to prepare a defense and the public's strong interest in a speedy trial. Therefore, we should begin with jury selection in December. Signed by Molly Gaston. Now, as we know, they referenced very briefly that they have a classified documents issue, and they do. They submitted this simultaneously. They said, hey, by the way, we have a little bit of information. The government has identified a small amount of classified info that might be subject to discovery in this case. This is the DC case. So they just asked for an expedited trial schedule, and they're disclosing that we need a separate pretrial conference to discuss the SEPA procedures. They said because it's minimal, the process can and should run in parallel with the rest of the case. SEPA decides and sets values, a process for determining how this process goes. And so they say the government believes that we can efficiently address all of this. The minimal amount, and I don't know what it is, that's potentially at issue here, and the fact that one of the defendant's attorneys of records already possesses an interim clearance to review certain material, the government does not expect the disclosure to extend the pretrial schedule in this case. So they are disclosing more stuff that Trump can't see, and they want the judge to limit what he can talk about, and they want the trial to happen immediately, even though he can't get all of the evidence. And this is happening out of DC, and that means that the DC judge is probably going to grant a lot of this or tailor it in a way that supports them. Why? Because it is just the nature of this judge. Our friend Techno Fog over on Twitter at Techno Fog put together this great thread. He said, we look through the recent history of Judge Tanya Chutkan, who presides over this case. Our findings? She's treating Trump worse than other defendants, including a meth dealer. Well, they compared him to a World Trade Center bomber. They say this past week, Judge Chutkan gave Trump team one business day to respond to the protective order requests. We talked about the local rules, which allow 14 days to respond. But she denied the extension. She said due process didn't apply to Trump. Here's a footnote. It says, without a doubt, the court's decision to vary from the default rules and allow Trump less than one business day to respond is concerning. Judge Chutkan set a hearing on August 11th, just 1 week after it was submitted. She denied Trump's request for a hearing where both lawyers could be present. And so we know that tomorrow we're going to be scheduled for a hearing on this protective order. In a prior case with a DC meth dealer, Judge Chutkan gave the meth dealer, which was probably not Hunter in this case. Was it Hunter? No, it's somebody named Jeremy. A 1 week deadline to respond to the protective order, and then set another hearing 2 weeks after it was submitted. Another one, a J6 defendant, got a 1 week response deadline and set the hearing out another week later. And so we see two different standards, one set of standards for other people and another set for Trump. And so Jack Smith is urging a very speedy trial for Trump. We're going to see what Judge Chutkan says and if this trial will stay on track as we continue to cover, my friends. And thank you for subscribing. There's going to be a lot more to get to ahead. All right, and now, this was all on the back of a very problematic election. And more evidence is now coming out about that problematic election. They told us there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud, and they came up with all these neat little phrases to justify why nothing could be done to investigate what we all knew was a highly problematic election. But as time goes on, we continue to see more evidence come out. In this video, we're going to go through a police report that details some very serious claims of massive voter fraud that took place in Michigan, a state that had a quite small margin, 150,000 votes, which might sound big, but when we're talking about buckets of votes in the amount of 10,000 per bucket, you can get that number pretty quickly. Now, this story came over from the Gateway Pundit. They had the exclusive on this, and so we want to shout them out ultra. You see, this came drafted from Benjamin Wetmore. Patty McMurray over there says that voter fraud was uncovered in Michigan. 800,000 ballot applications sent to non-qualified voters. Bags of prepaid gift cards, burner phones, and other items. Now, they've got special thanks going out to Phil O'Halloran, Lori Skibo for contributing to this story. But before we get to the police report, a little background here. They say on October 8th, 2020, 1 month before the 2020 election, a clerk in Michigan noted that a female, whose name was redacted, a black female, according to the report, dropped off 8,000 to 10,000 completed voter registration applications at the clerk's office. The Muskegon Police Department was contacted, asked to investigate. Number of people got involved. And that's where we're going to pick this up. So we're going to take a look at the police report in a quick second. But first, here is just the margin. It wasn't a big margin in Michigan. 154,000 votes. And if we have a batch of 10,000 votes, you'd only need about 15 of those batches, or 15 people delivering those batches. And that's just in Michigan. We see in other states, the margins were a lot smaller. Arizona was 10,457 votes. Georgia, 11,779 votes. Wisconsin, 20,000 votes. And so if you have this type of attack on the electoral infrastructure, one way to get away with it would be to distribute it so that you could not aggregate the various attacks. Because in all of the litigation cases that we've covered, one of the critical junctures, one of the critical elements that we saw was not often or ever met was that the evidence had to be enough to overcome and change the outcome of the election. And here in Arizona, they said, well, this was maybe a problem, that was a problem, but so what? Did it change anything? And the reason why we couldn't maybe not gather all of those various different cases is because they were so distributed. You had multiple actors in multiple locations doing multiple different things, almost like little terror cells, little voter fraud terror cells that are incubating all over the place. If you catch one, okay, you might prosecute them or stop that one, but it's not enough to meet that threshold. And so we see that there are massive numbers being discussed in this police report, which was created over in Michigan. This comes from the Department of State Police. Gretchen Whitmer was the governor when they were drafting this. And this letter came out February 24th, 2023, sent over to this guy, Keith Hinkle. He filed a public FOIA request with Michigan, and they sent it over to him. So ultra shout outs to Keith Hinkle in Michigan. Now they tell us what they have disclosed over, and the police report starts here. And they got this in October 26, 2020. And right after this time, I remember they told us there was no evidence of stuff like this. They said there's no evidence of voter fraud. So let's see if there is any type of evidence here. Received 1,700 hours in Muskegon County. The officer starts as follows. Looks like Detective Anderson. He says, on October 21st, 2020, I was contacted by Tom. He's the chief investigator from the Attorney General's office here in Michigan. Tom asked Michigan and the police for a joint investigation of alleged voter fraud being conducted by the Muskegon Police Department and the Attorney General. So a task force was formed. The investigation was ongoing. Now we have a suspect who's being named here in an incident report. A lot of redactions. Here's the background from a Muskegon Police Department report. On October 16, 2020, Muskegon City Clerk Ann Meisch and Deputy Clerk Kimberly Young, two women, contacted the Muskegon Police Department after noticing irregularities in voter registration applications received both in person and by mail. They're sitting around going, that does look a little strange here. We have Meisch, who is the city clerk. She received a small quantity and then larger quantities of voter registration applications by mail from a female later identified as so-and-so. It was found that so-and-so was working for a company called Blank, who went by the name, the company, also Blank Redacted. Meisch stated, the city clerk, that in her opinion, she's looking at these documents, she says, a quantity of voter registration forms were highly suspicious and they were possibly fraudulent. And so the clerk, she said, my opinion, she's talking to this detective, my opinion is based on the fact that numerous forms appeared to have been completed by the same writer. And upon initial examination, addresses on multiple forms were invalid or non-existent. The clerk investigated further and found that the phone numbers on multiple forms were erroneous, and signatures on multiple forms didn't appear to match signatures on file with the Department of State. Examples included an address in this location, redacted, and another one in this location. Those addresses don't even exist. Another form listed this address, which is the high school. That's clearly not a residence. The clerk found that all of the suspected fraudulent applications came from a mailing address at Blank. I wonder what that small redaction is. From a mailing address, Blank, at 2 locations, redacted and redacted. The clerk stated that some of the initial forms were dropped off on October 8th by a Blank, who identified herself as a so-and-so and stated that she was employed by this company. She stated the company was working to register voters and to help registered voters obtain absentee ballots. So-and-so provided her cell phone number at this address. The clerk said she later found so-and-so on Facebook and stated that the picture on the Facebook profile matched the person who dropped off the applications. The woman, I guess. Meisch told officers, the clerk, that Blank appeared to be reluctant to talk about the specifics regarding the company and said, I got to talk to my supervisor before I talk about any questions. The clerk said that Blank had delivered between 8 to 10,000 voter registration forms at the clerk's office. The clerk turned over 42 suspected fraudulent applications for examination. Now, we'll continue to read through this. Did those get through? Did those get logged in? What did they audit those? Did they identify who those were for? Did those people vote? Let's see. On October 20th, 2020, the deadline for in-person voter registration, so-and-so returned to the clerk's office to deliver additional forms in person. The clerk estimated that she brought an additional 2,500 forms. So the clerk contacted the police department, and Detective Logan Anderson and Captain Bridge, they conducted an interview of her. Non-custodial, they showed up. And guess what? She initially provided a fictitious date of birth. Wow. I thought she's just helping people register to vote. It was discovered that so-and-so redacted is redacted, big redaction here, and redacted. Picking up, told the detectives she worked for redacted. She said she was hired in Michigan in August 2020, and she was paid, it's pretty good money there, $11.50 per week to just make up forms, I guess. $11.50 per week to find unregistered voters and provide them with a form so they can get registered to vote or obtain their absentee ballot. She stated that she has worked in different areas of Michigan, and she's provided a rental car, and they put her up in hotels. She initially told investigators that, quote, canvassers are paid for each form that is completed, but later stated they were paid hourly no matter how many forms they turn in. So we don't know what it is. She stated that canvassers are paid through a reloadable pay card, and she stated that she's done work in Muskegon, Detroit, Ypsilanti, Southfield, Flint, and Lansing, going all over the place, throwing up in hotels. She was asked how voter registration forms were screened for accuracy and processed. She said, well, I've vet the forms for accuracy, and non-usable forms were placed in stacks at this other location, here and here. She stated that the forms were then uploaded into the system, and something redacted was nervous throughout the interview, but maintained that the initiative being conducted by this was legitimate. Detective confirmed that blank was driving an enterprise rental vehicle and the so-and-so and so-and-so. Blank left Muskegon after the interview. So another detective from Muskegon PD used the above information to draft a search warrant for GPS location for the phone number of that. The search warrant was signed and the location information was available. So then they moved to locate this info. On October 23rd, 2020, elections right around the corner, Detective Luker gave me several addresses derived from the location of the person's phone. The phone was located at this address with an accuracy of 8 meters. I contacted another detective and he requested he send personnel to check the address. Other officers went there. They went to a plaza located at the venue. When they got to the public area, detectives found that blank had a placard affixed for something, and Chang stated they saw an unknown male and female working inside. They took photos. The troopers also ran the plate of the black Nissan in the parking lot. The registration belonged to so-and-so. The troopers also stated that a medical supply and financial consulting business had suites in the building. The below list of the vehicles that were in the parking lot, and they give us this. There was a Dodge Ram there. There was a Nissan Sentra there, SRX, Dodge, Ford Escape, a lot of cars. They log them all. This is being investigated by the detective. Another Ford Escape, a Chevy Equinox. More surveillance is being conducted. October 26, officer requests that the troopers recheck this. Detective Purview checked the parking lot but did not find the Volkswagen rental or the black Nissan. Something redacted and something happened. Found 2 minivans redacted, and the following vehicles were there at this time. A lot of other people. Wow, I wonder if any of these other people were out there creating voter registration forms. I also requested that Purview check the address of this. This is the other address that was used on the return mailing labels. Purview found that this is the address for this. Redacted. They do some more research here to fill this out. He says, to find out more about this, I conducted several open source Google searches. I found postings offered by this company on both Job Searcher and Job Addict. The posting on Job Addict by the company offered an administrative assistant position in Muskegon Heights, Michigan. The posting stated $15 an hour, data entry on a voter registration project. The description stated the person would check on the accuracy of voter registration cards while entering them into the system and would call registrants to get incomplete cards, scan them, and help them. I also found multiple expired postings for the same type of stuff. Regional field manager, supervisor and driver, voter registration specialist. Ooh, that's fancy. I like that one. You want to be a voter registration specialist? Oh, I'd love that. What do? I just fill out a bunch of forms all day with fake signatures? I can do that. How much? Wow. There were also postings for regional field managers and others. So they get more details. Another analyst used Tennessee licensing information to determine that so-and-so was administratively dissolved. This company was formed using the address here on August 28, 2020, election year. This thing is listed as the address for this. This and the name redacted was provided to Muskegon. It would be very nice to read these names. While conducting initial workups on the vehicle driven by so-and-so, a check run through Tennessee Secretary of State shows redacted. The new company redacted using the address of this, but does not list him as an agent of the business. The business document will be added to the external documents. So an analyst then, his name is DeGroot, he researched this thing. DeGroot found that blank had a vendor recipient profile dating back to 2014. In 2008 midterm campaign cycle, DeGroot found that blank was paid $1.57 million by Doug Jones for Senate, $600,000 by the New American Jobs Fund, $188,000 by the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. All these listings are external documents. Initial workup suggests the majority of blank's work was founding Democratic candidates and organizations. Yeah, What a surprise. Not at all. Although the final numbers from the election cycle campaign in 2020 won't be available for some time, Blank was estimated to receive $242,000 from Joe Biden for president. Interesting. So this guy was getting paid directly from the Bidens to go register all these people to vote. And this person traces all the way back to this position at this company in his research. I ran blank through the Michigan licensing entity. This is what returned. He says, I ran both Google searches. I found another newspaper article that stated this person or this effort was a collaborative effort for urban communities. No recent references were found and no connections to so-and-so. I also searched for this in business. I found a nonprofit business named this. Looking through annual statements, I saw no connection. I collaborated with the Michigan Secretary of State. Oh, that's good. Yeah, because she needs to make sure that the elections are appropriate. Let's see how this went. Investigators had several online meetings with AG investigators, Muskegon PD, MSP, and representatives from the Secretary of State. The analyst from the Michigan SOS, named Corey, prepared a spreadsheet with information. Each suspicious voter registration form and other samples were sent to Ames for analysis and comparison with the qualified voter file. On 10/26/20, the spreadsheet highlighting irregularities was then sent to the PD for follow-up. More follow-up. They say on 10/27, Detective Luker conducted follow-up investigations based on the analysis done by the voter analyst. Here's the report. Detective contacted this entity, stated that she was approached by an acquaintance called this, and badgered to fill out a voter registration form. Blank was shown a completed voter registration application by Detective Luker and stated, yeah, I filled out the form, but I didn't sign it. Blank stated the signature at the bottom of the form was not hers. She had no idea who signed the form. Blank was shown a second completed form with her name and supposed signature on it. So they contact this woman who apparently filled out this registration form. Did you sign this? She stated that that was not her handwriting. She had no idea who completed the form or signed it. The form had the following errors: fictitious last four numbers of Social Security, fictitious phone number, invalid address. He says, I know that this is an intersection and not a residence. Same detective examined two other voter registration applications to conduct follow-up. He found the address on both forms for this does not exist. The name on the first form was searched. We searched in 3 databases. We examined another 2 registration applications and found the following issues. This does not exist. The name on the first form here was searched. The second form was listed as this with a duplicate date of this. We searched the name in 3 databases and couldn't find him. We examined a batch of 18 separate voter registration applications. When the applications were printed out and placed side by side, the handwriting on the 18 forms appear to be done by the same writer, and numerous signatures have the same characteristics. Detective says, multiple forms were missing key info, had duplicate last names at different addresses, and had inaccurate info. So after consulting with the detectives and the Secretary of State analyst, your affiant, the detective, would describe the results as finding that a quantity of the voter application forms are clearly fraudulent. A quantity of the voter application forms are highly suspicious, having either erroneous or are missing key pieces of information and merit further follow-up. And a quantity of the voter registration forms appear to be legitimate based on cross-checks and database reviews. So a bunch of problematic votes with the good ones. They do more surveillance. On October 28th, elections right around the corner, Detective Luker calls this other detective. He has a search warrant for a cell phone for this person. It elapsed, but it gets renewed. The GPS location showed that the phone was located in Grand Haven, Michigan. On October 28th at 9:15 a.m., I went to look for the black Nissan. An unidentified black male went into the hotel and left a short time later. Believing the minivan may be a rental and related to the investigation, I followed the van. The van entered the parking lot at the northwest corner of this intersection. An awning on the business stated it was California Eyewear. I did a search on the business and found California Eyewear was no longer in business. The Dodge Caravan was observed to have North Carolina registration and plates. Your affiant ran a lien check and found the following. The driver and the 3 females left in Broadway. I lost visual on the van. While I was conducting surveillance, another detective, Muskegon, Detective Luker, who was still watching the Best Western, Luker stated a female he visually identified as this person left the hotel in the black Nissan Sentra, went to a laundromat. Another detective contacted the Best Western and confirmed that, yep, that person had a room there and was going to check out on this date. Detective Eric and another person from DPS contacted the management and said, yep, they're going to check out by 11 a.m. So this detective goes back to the California Eyewear Center storefront. 3 different Dodge rental minivans, including the one that was followed from this hotel, were observed out front. Redacted here. Numerous unknown persons were witnessed getting out of the minivan, both coming in and going out of the front door of the business. At 10:30 a.m., I spoke with Detective. Detective Luker stated he went into Broadway and observed 2 other minivans, but no persons inside. They were able to get a bag of trash from the business, and they found paper in the bag with this person's info. There was other info about employee agreements, a potential list of canvassers, and COVID policies, because of course. So then they get some search warrants. On October 28th, he drafts a search warrant. It was reviewed by the appropriate people. He gets a search warrant, and we don't know what that one was for. This one's for the room of the Best Western Hotel. Based on the trash pull, he also got a warrant for the phone, over the phone and the search warrant. Same day, Wednesday, the 28th, this detective gets a call from Anderson. He says, would you execute a search warrant at the Best Western? He said that he would be executing one at the same time at a field office in Southfield. At 8 a.m. on Wednesday, I got a call from Luker. Luker said he'd been monitoring phone pings of the suspect this morning and that she had left the city at 5:30 a.m. After receiving this info, I drove through the parking lot of the Best Western and I noticed that the blank vehicle was not there. I advised Luker that we would wait until 10 a.m., the time of the search warrant, to execute at the Best Western. So they contact the Best Western owner. They get this person's name. Hey, we're about to raid your hotel. Sorry. At 10 a.m., I contacted the hotel. They stated that he owned the hotel, did not know anything about him. Stated that she's a customer service representative, said the occupant of the room said that blank left at 5:30 a.m. and requested a 1-day extension. She also requested the room service to clean her room. I asked blank if she talked to blank personally, and she stated no. Blank said that when she arrived at work on this date, she was told by the night shift employee that a request for room service was appropriate. They held the extension. While I was speaking to this person, while I was speaking to this person, Detective Stevens and Rosh executed the search warrant on the room. Cleaning personnel had just opened the room prior to us arriving, and they gained access that way, doors open. Noted the search was only toiletry items and clothes that appeared to belong to a female. Nothing was seized. Stevens took photographs of the Best Western room using the cell phone. Photos were all uploaded, entered into digital evidence. They have some stuff that was obtained. It looks like a Staples brand DVD-R. Oh, okay. So he put them all on a DVD drive and he's uploading them. Photos of the search warrant. That's impounding it into evidence. He says, even though nothing was seized, I did return and filed it into evidence, search warrant affidavit, and the registrations and the photos. Then we see that this moves forward. Looks like we have a supplement. It says, I was contacted by Anderson and requested to assist with the execution of a search warrant. We executed it on the room. They say through the investigation, Anderson obtained information indicating that blank did something, and the suspect blank conducted business out of a storefront. We got a search warrant, searched that place. It was California Eyewear. Appeared to be an awning on the awning, but it was no longer in business. Connected to a beauty supply store. Bunch of detectives were there for the search warrant. Here's the execution of the search warrant. The date is 10/29. It's a Thursday, 2:30 p.m. The building was locked. No one was around. Officers are there. I knocked and announced, "State Police search warrant," several times. No one opened the door. I made contact with employees at the Donnie Beauty Supply next door. I contacted the owner of the building manager. He responded to the scene. He unlocked the front door of the awning, the California Eyewear. We entered the building, saw no one was there. We searched the business for evidence listed on the search warrant. While executing the search, several employees arrived to start their shifts at 3:30 p.m. Detective Luker and I spoke with the employees that stopped. However, most drove through the parking lot and left upon seeing a police presence. We're gone. Bye. See ya. Oh, cops are here, man. Get out of here. Detective Luker's interviews will be documented in a separate report. Upon completion of the search, the seized evidence was secured in my detective vehicle. I left a copy of the search warrant and a return tabulation with my business card. Here's what we've got. The following list and evidence was seized. The item number is listed as follows. It should be noted that some of the evidence was combined when packaged. Here's what we've got. 4 vehicle manifest packets, another one, HP laptop, financial records, net spend cards. We've got an Apple iPad they seized, black case, voter application packets in a cardboard box. Cardboard box containing GBI strategies and vehicle manifest, and manifest packets, field canvasser manual, a plastic tote containing COVID statements, a black plastic tote containing employee packets, new hire documents, and so on. A lot of this stuff was photographed. At one point, I interviewed this person in my detective vehicle in the parking lot of California Eyewear. Blank advised, she says, "I'm a temporary worker of this. I work as a canvasser. I was just here for my 3:30 p.m. shift. I had no idea the cops were going to be here." She worked for the company for approximately 3 weeks. I said, "What are your duties entailed?" She said, "I go door to door in Muskegon area. And I ask residents to take a survey regarding the election." She explained the survey consisted of questions asking the individuals, asking if they intended to vote, had they already voted, and if they supported Joe Biden for president. She said, "I get $120 per 8-hour workday, which was loaded into a Skylight One Net spend card at the end of the work week." She produced her card. She received it when she was hired by the company. I asked Blank how the survey was conducted. She said, "Well, the team leaders provided the canvassers with tablets that contained preloaded questions." She stated that other employees were given tablets when they left the vehicle and they returned them. She stated each tablet was signed out. They signed them back in. She says, "We do not have control of the tablets ourselves." I said, "Do you have other duties here?" She stated her first assignment when being hired was to get residents registered to vote. She explained she and other employees set up stations outside of businesses asking citizens, "Are you registered?" If they were not and they wished to register, they'd fill them out and turn them in at the end of the shift. Blank advised she never filled out or signed a registration application for anyone. All the forms she turned in were completed by the voter. She said, which is probably why she didn't flee when the cops were there. But everybody else did. She said she never witnessed other employees completed forms for anyone else either. I asked Blank if she was paid per voter application. She said no. She said she was paid $15 per hour no matter how many she completed. I asked Blank who her supervisor was, and she believed that so-and-so was in charge of this office. Blank appeared to be very uncomfortable talking with me and said she had to leave before people accused her of being a rat. Oh, man. Man, I can't talk to the cops. They're going to think I'm a rat. Further, she stated she had not witnessed any illegal activity from any employees, but grew suspicious as she believed she saw undercover officers watching the office the previous day. Well, she was right about that. Blank did not wish to talk any longer and says, "Just call me later." The interview was ended and I gave her my business card. We have another one. They talk to the building manager. He says, I'm the property manager. He said the tenants are leasing short term. They've only been here for 2 months. My understanding is they're an election polling company from out of state. I typically deal with this person. She was the office manager. The lease expired on 10/17, but they didn't hear from anyone with the company. So-and-so began the process of moving their belongings out to prepare for a new renter. He stated someone from the company contacted his supervisor. They wanted to extend the lease to November 4th. Weird. What day is that? Yeah, they wanted to extend it until the day after the election. This is an interview with a development company about leasing the property. Said it was leased by this. The company leased the property through a realtor. The realtor's this person. Not heard from this person after the lease expired, so the company just went AWOL. Said, what do they do? I don't exactly know what the mission was. I think that they're a polling company working in an area. I only spoke to them via email or a phone call. I had no contact with anyone from the company. The lease agreement was just signed by email, or this person, who's apparently the owner of the company. And so everything's being done remotely. She's just like, no, I just sent some email, and then they got the place. Here's what they say about some of the seized materials. Detective says, in reviewing the multiple tablets located in a charging bank at the back of the office and interviews with employees, we learned the surveys were conducted on an application called Grassroots Unwired. A Google result revealed that Grassroots Unwired aids nonprofit groups with GPS-enabled mobile app for fundraising and advocacy. We see here we've got stuff that was picked up, evidence that was seized from this location, which is the California eyewear fake business. Cardboard box containing vehicle manifest packets. We've got another computer, hardware, software, HP laptop, more documents, personal business documents. We've got a plastic Ziploc baggie of receipts, rubber banded together to net spend cards. Pink sticky notes, names, telephone numbers. More computer hardware, Apple iPad, cardboard box, more voter registration applications, employee forms, plastic totes. The rest of this looks like it is just inventory. Here we've got another supplement. On October 29th, I traveled to serve a search warrant on this location. Big paragraph redacted here. We made the investigative plan to do this, redacted. So we have another detective, Sanchez, and his crew. They were tasked with finding this person. Details of the surveillance can be found in a following report. Sanchez and his crew did find blank, and they followed her to Roseville and then west towards Lansing. The decision was made to do a traffic stop and conduct an interview. They stopped her. She was stopped, consented to an interview, transported down to the station by these people. I traveled to this location. I helped finish the search, and I took possession of evidence for transport. Now they're investigating this person's offices. There were several offices and storage rooms located in the two interconnected suites adjacent to this other suite, going around the building. Two of the offices contained laptops and computers, sticky notes that read no files. One was hooked up to a document scanner. A storage room contained several large husky rolling totes. The totes were labeled and filled with items like rain ponchos, hand sanitizer. There were several large Pelican cases that had cutouts for tablets with charging docks. They went door to door doing voter education surveys. The rear storeroom in the office had items associated with manager Brillis. We've got payment cards that were prepayment cards from two different companies. NetSpend, based out of Austin, Texas, and Skylight. We got binders of employee information. We have some partially completed voter registration forms found in the room. That's curious. Now, that could be because they were setting them aside and they were just, oh, these are problematic. Let's call and fix them. In addition to the shelving room, there was a long table with partially completed voter applications with sticky notes found on the table. They also found Pelican cases in the room with semi-automatic rifles, joined with suppressors and optics and customized pistols. Not just voter registration forms. We've got semi-automatic rifles in the house. Brillis indicated that the weapons belonged to the owner, blank. Detectives later found a binder in the room containing valid tax stamps for the suppressors, receipts for the accessories, trust paperwork for the future transfer of the weapons. An ATF agent was called to the scene. The weapons were field tested for being fully automatic, found to be legal. Lucky for them. One case had 4 rifles and 4 pistols. The other case had 1 rifle. Second weapon appeared to be a short-barreled rifle. The weapons were secured and left in the custody of this. One of the whiteboards had several notes on it. One of the categories was hot topics. Under hot topics, listed was weapons in the field, prepared for shifts, COVID questionnaire, mask enforcement, no eating in vans. Another headline was TIF GA project, and the words underneath, 44 pay cards, 30 phones, 20 tablets. 44 pay cards, 30 phones, 20 tablets. It's a whole entourage. Another heading was Charleston to Columbia. 10 tabs, 1 10-port, 2 pads. They're planning, right? They're planning where they're going. A bulletin board in the room appeared to track employees in vans going to different parts of Michigan. A large quantity of lime green and blue t-shirts were found there. They said, Empower Michigan. A receipt was located for the purchase of the shirts. Numerous contractor agreements were filled out with the names of employees. Recruiting handout cards were being paid $140 per day with bonuses for completing 6 to 7 days of work. So we've got more seized evidence, including a black binder with payroll info, more payroll manifests, another black binder, black binders here, more black binders, all the way down here. Canvasser manual, envelopes, charger, Samsung tablet, all picked up. And that's part 1. I think let's pick it up here with part 2. We see more documents, all inventory, iPads, UPS shipping receipts. The rest of this looks like it's inventory. Let's see what else we've got. Now, they say that they executed an initial search warrant. So this guy also contacted Mike Anderson in a different city. This is in the city of Southfield in Oakland. Original intelligence suggested that the sole suite was suite so-and-so. Trooper Kiefer and I entered the suite unoccupied. It was aesthetically obvious the purpose of the room was to do voter work. So I think this is the person who helped execute the search warrant. It's just another angle on the same search warrant execution. While I looked around the room, I heard a door open from the hallway. While I looked around, a black female emerged. She asked if she could help me. I informed her the reason for my visit. She later identified herself verbally as manager so-and-so. 2 more individuals emerged from the suites across the hall as well. And so-and-so and so-and-so told me she and blank work for blank, and they rent the suites across the hall. I clarified if she was talking about the rooms there. She said yes. Okay, can you please stay here? We have a search warrant. So this must be at a different location. This is in Livonia. I made contact with the inhabitants of the space rented by blank to execute the search warrant. When inside, there were so-and-so, and this is redacted. The venue for the search warrant was here. It's redacted. We can't see it. Where did this happen? At this point, I knew the search warrant did not cover the suites across the hall where they had emerged from, but blank stated that blank did legally rent these places. I could see computers and paperwork. We did a sweep of the suites to make sure that there was nothing problematic there. I stood in the training room. when I was making phone calls, I had my recorder active. I spoke with so-and-so via video chat. He identified himself as blank. I observed a middle-aged black male with a medium build on blank iPhone chat screen. I asked him what his blank was. He stated blank is an operations firm that helps out around campaigns. We're an operations team. We go out in the field, we knock on doors. We send people into the community, knock on doors to engage, educate, mobilize the community around different elections. I went on to ask, are you currently in Michigan? He said, no, I'm not. I'm in Iowa. Blank asked to see a copy of my search warrant. And I told her, somebody else came in, I told her that I would give her a copy when I get the name of her role in the company. As soon as I obtained her name, I provided her with a copy of the warrant. This occurred after the first conversation with this person ended. I also heard this person telling that person she needed to make sure she declared the personal items he left behind before leaving the state. That includes multiple firearms. While waiting for an updated search warrant, more employees arrived on scene. All of them were cooperative with waiting. They interviewed other people. Those are all detailed. Some other people did not want to talk without consulting with a lawyer. Good call. Also, while waiting for the amended search warrant, blank approached me and stated the attorney for so-and-so wanted to speak with me. They got a lawyer on the phone. Brian calls. He says, hey, I'm with a law firm. They've wired him a bunch of money. Brian stated his firm is being retained. Those defense lawyers, man, they ruin everything. Brian stated, we'd be fully cooperative, give you whatever we need. Brian asked me if we would be seizing hardware from the space. I said, I presumed we would, but did not know how much we would take. I got his cell phone number, called him after clearing the scene. We got an amended search warrant. And we've got some additional stuff that's gobbled up. Several electronic items were seized. Looks like including a thumb drive, 256 gigabyte. Here's a bunch of other stuff. All right, we've got a bunch of entries, different supplements. Oh, look. So guess who swoops in here? The FBI. The case will remain open as the FBI has opened an investigation on the nationwide organization. Curious. Case will remain open. Did they do anything with it? Nothing was seized on that one. You see some more supplemental filings. This looks like it's the hotel fee. Best Western, yeah. This one, $85 a night. $85 a night on that one. Here's the search warrant. Searching the Best Western room. And you see the rest of the supplements here. So 8 to 10,000 voter registrations just from that one woman. And there was a whole team of people doing this stuff. Here is the inventory form, evidence tabulation form, more search warrants. Of course, all signed off on by the judge and then executed. So that is it on the police reports, my friends. Now, you notice that it's very, very convenient. It all just gets gobbled up by the FBI. But that was just one person that we heard of. 10,000 registration forms may be problematic. How many of those went through? How many of those were double checked or audited? No idea, right? And they're not going to tell us about it. The FBI, we'll take it from here. Nothing happens. But if those operations are happening in various states like Michigan, not a big margin there. Same thing happening in Arizona. Same thing happening in Georgia and Wisconsin. 10,000, 11,000, 20,000 votes. These people get who knows how much money from who knows where to create these little operations to go out there and seize the vote with fake registration forms. And when the local police investigate it, FBI swoops in, takes it out from them, and they lecture all of us about how there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud. There's no evidence. We just read through about 50 pages of police reports that show us there are massive national operations. Even the FBI is investigating national massive operations but they still look at us and tell us that we're all crazy. We're not. And as more evidence continues to be revealed, hopefully more people wake up, because we've got another election around the corner. All right, my friends, now we've got one final segment on the day before we check in with you and see what you have to say about all this. And this one, of course, is very fun. Joe Biden is getting a subpoena. That's according to James Comer from the House of Representatives. And we've seen him send subpoenas before. We know he got into it with Christopher Wray, the so-called director of the FBI. And now he's saying that as this investigation heats up, Joe Biden is not immune from any of this. Here's what he said.
Subpoena Hunter Biden.
Yeah, this is always going to end with the Bidens coming in front of the committee. We are going to subpoena the family. I mean, we're putting the case together to win in court. Obviously, with all the opposition and obstruction we're getting from the Biden attorneys now, we know that this is going to end up in court when we subpoena the Biden. So we're putting together a case, and I think we've done that very well. We've shown the bank records. If I had subpoenaed Joe and Hunter Biden the first day I became chairman of the committee, it would have been tied up in court, and the judge would have eventually thrown it out, because at that time the narrative was, well, they never took any money while he was vice president. He never had any communication with his business associates, and the money never came from China. We've had to go every step of the way and prove the media narrative was wrong, and the vice president and the current president lied. We have caught Joe Biden in so many lies, I can't even count the number of lies now. So we have put together a case that I think would stand up in any court of law in America, and we hope to hear from the Biden soon. But I wish the media would ask the president, what exactly did your family do to receive this $21 million that the House Oversight Committee has proven? He just continues to say, well, that's a lie. That's not true. We have their bank records, Maria.
Right.
Bank records don't lie.
Congressman, when are you expecting to subpoena Joe and Hunter Biden?
Well, we want to talk to about 3 or 4 more associates first. We've been communicating with a couple of them. We're trying to bring them in just like we did Devon Archer for a transcribed interview. If they don't come in voluntarily, then they'll be subpoenaed. So this is taking a lot longer. But if you look at how the special counsel, Durham or other special counsels conducted investigations, I think our committee is going a whole lot faster than any other congressional committee in history and any other special counsel. Yeah. This is a complicated case, and we're being obstructed every step of the way by the Department of Justice, by the FBI, by the Secret Service, by the IRS, and by the Biden family attorneys. Wow. But that's not stopping us. We continue to produce evidence about every 2 weeks.
Well, we would not.
And we'll keep following it, of course, but why not subpoena him and Hunter and James, everybody else? If they're going to go ahead and indict the president 4 times, 5 times, maybe more, yeah, why not? It's just total blood sport now in politics, and that's what they're after. One person we've got a lot of concern with here, Lesley Wolf, over at the U.S. Attorney's Office, the person who was supposedly prosecuting Hunter, but instead was alerting the Biden crime family to all of the potential investigations that were coming down the pike for them. Ted Cruz sent this letter over to David Weiss, the U.S. attorney who is so-called an investigator of Hunty. Ted Cruz says, Dear Mr. Weiss, in light of recent testimony from 2 IRS whistleblowers, Gary Shapley and Ziegler, it appears that the U.S. attorney who has been on Hunter's case, named Lesley Wolf, actively obstructed the FBI from properly investigating Hunter Biden, as well as any possible wrongdoing by Joe. Among other things, Ted says, these whistleblowers have alleged that Wolf, the U.S. attorney who is a prosecutor of Hunter, deliberately blocked off investigative avenues related to Biden, and that she prevented FBI agents from inquiring about whether President Joe knew about sensitive topics during agent interviews. Additionally, these whistleblowers have claimed that Wolf at Merrick Garland's office prevented the IRS agents from pursuing a search warrant at the Wilmington guest house for Joe Biden because it would be a bad state of optics. They had probable cause. They know that they should go investigate it, but it was bad optics. Doesn't apply to Trump. Cruz says these allegations are particularly troubling given the nature of U.S. Attorney Wolf's close relationship with Alexander Mackler. Who's this? A known Bile loyalist. Mackler served on the Biden-Harris transition team in 2020 and was Vice President Biden's White House deputy counsel for 2 years when he was VP. That person also managed Beau Biden's successful campaign for Delaware in 2010, served as press secretary for Senator Biden for 2 years, and he also served as a U.S. attorney in your office from 2016 to 2019. So very close. This person, Mackler, Biden loyalist, also a U.S. attorney. As a lead prosecutor in the Hunter Biden probe, Prosecutor Wolf, worked alongside Mackler at the office when he was an attorney then, the period that coincided with the same initiation of the Hunter investigation. So yes, this guy's a U.S. attorney. He's not working on the Hunter Biden case, but he's working right next door to USA Wolf, who is working on the case. Emails recovered from Hunter's laptop reveal affectionate correspondence between the Bidens and Mackler, who was for a period of time at the U.S. Attorney's Office. That raises serious concerns about his objectivity. Federal court records also indicate that Wolf and Mackler prosecuted a firearms case, meaning that they've worked together. And we know that Wolf and her husband have a history of donating to Democrats, of course. Cruz says during Shapley's testimony in front of the IRS, he revealed that on December 7, 2020, agents were ordered to stand down. They were going to do a knock and talk with Hunter Biden in LA, but authorities intervened. According to Agent Shapley, 3 days later, your office, David Weiss, became aware that Hunter Biden's personal belongings were transferred to a storage unit by his company called Owasco. Agents prepared to execute a search warrant on Hunter's property, but U.S. Attorney Wolf rejected it. Shapley stated that after the rejection, Shapley and the special agent in charge called David Weiss to talk about this. And you agreed if no one accessed the storage unit for 30 days, then you could execute the search warrant. But Shapley said, as soon as we got off the phone, we heard that Wolf had reached out to Hunter's lawyers. The prosecutor contacted Hunter's defense lawyers and said, we're watching your storage unit. And he went and got the evidence out. The allegations of Wolf's obstruction, I mean, it's insane, and Mackler's obvious ties to the Bidens are troubling. So I've got questions for you, David. Can you confirm or deny whether Mackler was involved to any degree in this probe? Was Mackler ever present during any discussion of this probe, on any video call, any email correspondence with your office? Did the U.S. Attorney Wolf or any other member of your office discuss the Biden probe in any way whatsoever with Mackler? Were you aware of Wolf and her husband's history of partisan political donations before you appointed her? And if you knew about it, did you do anything to address that? Did you ask her to recuse herself? If you did not, why not? Were you aware that during his time as the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, Mr. Mackler exchanged emails that were, quote, warm, loving emails with Hunty while Hunter was under investigation by you? Did you know that? Were you likewise aware that these same emails showed that Mackler asked Hunter to speak over the phone several times while Hunter was under investigation by your office? Did you know that? What did Mackler and Hunter discuss? Is it accurate that Attorney USA Wolf, refrained from pursuing a search warrant for Wilmington, even though there was probable cause? Can you tell us what her reasoning was behind the decision not to take the search warrant? Was that decision consistent with your office? Ted says, can you provide any insight into Wolf's claims that Wolf alerted Hunter's lawyers about a knock and talk in LA? Were you aware before your phone call with Shapley that Wolf rejected agents to search the storage unit in Virginia? Why, David, did you instruct agents to wait 30 days before executing the search warrant on Hunter's storage unit? And is it standard practice for prosecutors in your office to alert that your target's lawyers with information that could frustrate a pending search? So if you don't normally do that, which they don't, why did the U.S. Attorney do that? Thank you for your prompt attention to this important matter. I look forward to your response. Sincerely, your friend, Ted Cruz. The corruption is just insane. 30 days. Even David Wolf said we'll give it 30 days. If no one accesses it, then we'll go get it. You imagine if it's Trump? They went after Trump's deleted Twitter account. And they said that we can't even tell him about the search warrant to go get that because it is possible that Trump, who has Secret Service protection, might flee the country. That's how insane they are. But if they're talking about a search warrant for Hunter, they'll literally warn him about it so he can delete the evidence. That's our Department of Justice. Now, a very uncomfortable thing for some Democrats to talk about. One Democrat is named Elizabeth Warren. She hates this question. Jake Tapper asks it anyways, and she immediately changes the subject.
Republicans on the House Oversight Committee say that they have identified more than $20 million in payments from foreign sources to the Biden family, including Hunter Biden and their business associates. So far, we haven't seen any direct evidence pointing to Joe Biden, President Biden, doing anything illegal. And I don't necessarily know what's everything that's in this. But I do wonder on a broader level, the 30,000 foot view of this. People close to people close to Joe Biden or people close to Donald Trump, but I'm talking about Joe Biden, making tens of millions of dollars because of their closeness to him. That can't be something that you like. That can't be something that you're comfortable with as a phenomenon.
Look, I always worry about the influence peddlers in Washington, regardless of party affiliation. One of the things,
Will you
as
answer
you
the
know,
question,
I've
then?
spent a lot of my time in Congress working on is how we bring just more ethics and more oversight in general to everything that we do in government. We've got a United States Supreme Court where people take gifts and don't even report them, even though the law requires them to report.
Well, that's weird. So she's upset about the Supreme Court, but not Hunter Biden taking millions of dollars from foreign countries and not reporting that. Very interesting little pivot there, Liz. But we have one final segment here on these clips here. We've got Peter Doocey is asking the president about Devon Archer's testimony. Joe Biden didn't like the question.
There's this testimony now where one of your son's former business associates is claiming that you were on speakerphone a lot with them talking business. Is that what?
Never talk business with anybody. And I know you'd have a lousy question.
Well, why is that a lousy question?
Because it's not true.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Peter. Bye, Peter. Thanks, Peter. See ya. So I never discuss business. Well, that's weird because he was on 20 times on speakerphones during business meetings. That's what we're asking about. So he doesn't want to answer that. The White House says that's perfectly sufficient. That's all we get out of the president. He did answer the question.
That Hunter had access to the then vice president and to sell the Biden brand. So what do you say about that, John? And when will the president actually answer some of these questions to put some of this to rest himself?
Oh, my goodness, Martha. I mean, he just did with Peter. I mean, he's the one who called Peter over and had Peter, risk life and limb cutting across that barrier. I mean, he specifically called Peter over. And he, look, he knows Peter. He knows Peter's not going to ask some softball question about, how his vacation was. He knows who Peter is, and he answered that question. And I don't know what it's going to take.
He didn't answer whether or not he was on speakerphone in those meetings, John. He just said, I never talked business to anybody.
The question was about business, and he answered it consistently with what he said so many times before. He's been very consistent that he wasn't talking business.
But the question is, was he allowing his presence, on speakerphone to speak volumes? Was he allowing that presence to say, this is my son, he has access to me, while he's talking to Ukrainian businessmen, Chinese businessmen, Russian businessmen, after the invasion of Crimea, as Katie Pavlich just pointed out?
I just don't know how many times he's going to have to say no to the same question. And he said it consistently. He's been consistent about this. There were no discussions about business with his son or his son's business partners. And again, he called Peter over. And I'm not saying he knew that was the question, but he certainly knew it wasn't going to be a softball when he answered it.
That's our president, baby. He's delivering home runs. And so another A+ for the president. Thanks for being so open and transparent with your response to our allegations of massive, endless, boundless corruption. That's all we're going to get from Joe. That's all they're really going to give us because they know the media is going to continue to protect him at all costs. We'll continue to expose it. Hopefully you join us as we do, my friends, as we continue to cover. Thank you for subscribing and following along, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for us on the day. We covered some good ground, and now it's time to hear from you. We talked about Biden getting a subpoena. We'll be looking forward to it when it comes. Major voter fraud ring busted in Michigan, and that was a doozy of a police report, and I'm sure that's just literally the tip of the iceberg. FBI's investigating it now, though, so don't worry about it. And Jack Smith is urging a very, very speedy trial in the House. And so that is it for us, my friends. Let's see what you have to say. Before we jump into your comments, one final reminder, we've got a brand new, fresh website, robertgovea.com, where if you missed the show, we have a daily newsletter there. So if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get an update the following morning on all the things we talked about, all the latest segments, and we'd love to see you sign up so that we never lose touch at robertgovea.com. All right, and now let's see who is in the house. We got Tony Hay Munkets. Hey, welcome back, Tony Hay Munkets. It's good to see you back in the house. We love Tony Hay. Glad that you joined us on the shout out level over on YouTube. Tony Hay Munkets. And hey, we got Voice of the People, man. Super generous. Thank you, Voice. Voice of the People is bringing in 10 new people into our amazing community. Thank you, Voice. Which means tomorrow morning, our members-only morning stream is going to be extra lit. We got CAM, Luda Carson's here, Donna C, James C. We got Andrew W. Let's Go is here. We got Different Kind of Animal, August S, Chase Junkie, and Opposing Force, all coming in courtesy of Voice of the People. We love our members. Thank you, Voice, for gifting 10 of them in the house. We got this one from 66 Anton. Says, happy Thirsty Thursday. We still thirsty for accountability and justice. Always could use a nice big glass of justice. Always. Absolutely amazing. We've got another one from Wims. Wims, thank you so much. We got 10 membos coming in courtesy of Wims in the house. Thank you, Wims. Man, tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun. Our members only stream. So Wims, bring it in. We've got Pyramid 7, Dustin the Wind. We got RMK, Mimetic Militias here. John Williams. We got Mike, Zach F. Fa Berghart is here. Line Theory and Rosemarie T. All in the house, courtesy of Wims. Thank you, Wims. Very, very generous of you. And we're looking forward to seeing our members tomorrow morning. Actually, tomorrow is going to be an interesting one because I think there is a George Allen Kelly proceeding as well. So we might jip into that as well. So thank you, Wims. Thank you to Wims. And welcome aboard 10 new people. We've got Jameson's here, says, my email is not funny, but hope informative. Well, thank you, Jameson. Yeah, sometimes this stuff is informative, and the more informative it is, the less funny it is, you know? It's like the opposite of ignorance is bliss. Or no, I think that's true. Ignorance is bliss, and you're informed, and you're not in a state of bliss. Thank you very much, Jameson. We got Voice of the People. Thank you, Voice. Says, hey, Hunter's gun charge is ruled unconstitutional. How? Higher court judged American history and tradition. How? A higher court judged American history and tradition does not justify disarming a sober citizen based exclusively on his past drug usage in its ruling overturning the conviction. So I think I did see this, Voice, and I want to make sure that we are, I didn't see the details. I saw the headline on this. So was this in the same jurisdiction? Was this ruling? It was a Court of Appeals ruling, right? That said that the actual statute that under which these crimes are brought was unconstitutional. But also, Hunter doesn't have a conviction yet. He hasn't entered anything. He hasn't been convicted of anything yet. So this could mean that the government will turn around and dismiss the gun charge because it's not a valid charge anymore. And that would be the felony diversion charge, but then they would still have the tax misdemeanors. It's a great, thank you for the flag on that, Voice. I've got two questions. One is, what is it going to cause the DOJ to do? Is it going to change their policy? Are they appealing this ruling? And is this ruling in the same jurisdiction as Hunter's case in Delaware? I don't know the answers to those. But you're right. I mean, in general, I think you're right. I don't like the laws that criminalize people doing things with guns in general, because they're often used to criminalize law-abiding, otherwise law-owning, good citizens, in other words. Like they're not stopping the bad guys, Like I'm not in favor of people using guns to murder, but oftentimes they'll end up penalizing citizens and infringing upon your Second Amendment rights in the name of my safety or whatever it is they're justifying. So, yeah, so we'll be curious to see how that all applies. More specifically, what the DOJ does with it. But thanks for the comment, Voice. Appreciate you being here. Jameson says, USA versus Throckmorton from chat, and U.S. versus Nixon for me, from Jameson in the house. Sounds like a couple of good cases. Have to take a look at those. We got CFR BW over on Rumble. What's up? Thank you, Rumble. CFRO BW in the house. Says attacking him with a fake Trump-Russian collusion designed to overturn the 2016 election for Obama to control things through Hillary. Right, since like day one. It's been going on for years. And now they want Trump to have what, like 5 months to prepare a defense? Give me a break. Cindy Banks over on Locals. What's up, Cindy? Says Michigan's Attorney General changed the law, mailed out ballots to everyone. She did not have the authority to do so. There were no signatures for any ballots in the state. None of the votes are legal. 350, they turn on 55,000 votes for Biden, 5,500 for Trump, 631, same thing. I remember watching it. I mean, we went to bed that night. We were streaming that night. We're like, wow, it looks pretty simple. Woke up the next morning, everything changed. That could never happen in Michigan. Both the Senate and the House were Republican that year in Michigan, says Cindy. Yeah, it was. There were a lot, and this was happening not only in Michigan but everywhere. So two things, right? The fact is that more Democrats use mail-in votes. We had COVID lockdowns, which was going to suppress day of election turnout just in general because everybody was still freaked about it. So they're not going in person, so they're suppressed. And the people who have a low propensity to vote, who don't register to vote, you just kind of automatically register them or you enable them to vote by mail. They are low interest voters. There's a big enthusiasm gap that exists between the left and the right. And so they close that gap by suppressing the day-in votes and by enabling the mail-in ballots, whether you want them or not. And that closes the margin by small amounts. You need 10,000 votes in Arizona, 20,000 votes in Wisconsin. It's not a lot. So, yeah, not good. Just Cause says, electronics fraud, guns with suppressors, no RICO. I think the FBI kind of was just like, well, this doesn't feel like a white supremacy case, so we're just going to let it go. Good to see you, Jess. Tony Hay says, got my membership back, payday at this point. Does it even matter? Biden has already done the damage to America. People, including me, are going bankrupt. Well, it does matter, Tony Hay. It does matter. We cannot just cede this game to them. There is really no alternative. And if we do that, things will be much worse for all of us. So I think that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. I'm personally optimistic about this. I know that times are tough for a lot of people out there, and I'm sorry that you're feeling it. But I'd encourage you to stay positive best you can and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And if you keep developing yourself, developing your skills, doing your best to provide value to your community, the people around you, take care of them, I think that this will work out well for our side in the long run. Because we want to build something up. All they're doing is tearing stuff down. We want to build something up, and I think we'll be better for it. So thanks, Tony Hay. Thanks for being here. I'm glad you made it back. And thanks for supporting us, even though times are tough. We got this from the Most Banned Queen. Says, what is the statute of limitations for the Biden crimes they are investigating? Not an easy answer on this, the Most Banned Queen, because they had some extensions by agreements of the statute of limitations. So some of them have already expired. So for example, his 2014, his 2015 case, those have already expired. And then like the others were extended by agreement. And it depends on the crime. And so I don't know what the specific ones are for crimes, but it depends. Like felonies could be 7 years, could be 5 years. But in many of these, they've actually extended them so that they don't expire as part of the negotiation. So they're saying, we're gonna keep negotiating for 5 years on this plea deal The statute of limitations is coming up, so they just agree to extend it. So ultimately, I don't know what they are, but they are cognizant of them, and they're not going to let them expire. Because I think that the court is also now cognizant, aware of them. We got this one. Chrissy's here, says, hey, Rob, Congress should call those Michigan detectives in to testify. That's a great idea, Chrissy. That is a great idea. Yeah, and I wonder what they would do. I mean, they're basically like whistleblowers. They investigated this whole scheme and nothing ever happened. You know what's happening out of Michigan is they're indicting and prosecuting a bunch of senior citizens who signed off on a document that said alternate electors. So that's happening. They're not investigating 2020 criminal crime fraud voter ring, but they are prosecuting the people who signed something wrong. And I agree with you. Congress should start flexing a little bit more. Chrissy, yesterday we talked about Matt Gaetz, and Matt Gaetz had an interesting idea of just immunizing people. No, you're just immune. Just come in. It will backdate the immunity. It's retroactive. And you're immunized, just like you would be if you were a co-defendant who exposed, like if you're a whistleblower. Yeah, I was involved in some crimes, but I'm going to testify about them, and I'm immunized now in exchange for my testimony. Congress could basically create a contract with Trump just like they tried to do in the plea deal. Great idea, Chrissy. Love it. Greg is here. What's up, Greg? Greg says, no question, but thanks for the dono, Greg. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here, and thanks for sending that one in. Michael Allen Hughes says, if I felt better, I would have had more to say. You're not feeling well? A lot of people are sick out there, Michael. Hopefully you feel better soon. I heard that. I think I heard that in James Comer's voice, a little bit of a head cold or something. Cindy says Pennsylvania had 200,000 more ballots than voters. So I don't know the numbers. So, verify the numbers. But, who had printing press? You need to listen to Thomas McKierney, John B. Wells for ARC. August 5th, he nailed down all 6 states, including Wisconsin. There are only 97,000 in the whole country. Bring DC on. Yeah. There's a lot of numbers. I can't, verify or vet the numbers here on the fly, but I know there's all sorts of problems with the numbers. And the numbers aren't even that big. So like, Cindy, to your point, 200,000? Okay, so what? That's 20 people who were involved. 20 people at 10,000 a pop. There you go. That's over. And there was a whole team of people down there in Michigan flying all over the place. So why would that also not be happening in Pennsylvania? Seems obvious. Good comment, Cindy. We got Quantum says, Quantum Thug Life, which is Thug Life in a multi-dimensional space, brought in 5 new membos. Thank you, Quantum. We got Lear. We got Sam Adams in the house. We got Rish G. We got Old Dog Crapper in the house. We've got Dr. Who Eric also joining us. Thank you to Quantum Thug Life, thugging it up in the multiverse. We got Woodchip Bill says worth the dono. Thanks, Woodchip. I appreciate that. I appreciate the dono. Thanks for supporting what we're doing. Thanks for being a member on Locals. Indoctrination says, loving the daily newsletter and going to use the mind map for work. Better than PowerPoint for sure. Love that. Okay, cool. Yeah, the mind map is great. I use it for all sorts of stuff. I use it to think through problems. You can actually, it actually has a presentation mode. I've never actually used it, but it has a presentation mode. Like, I think you can go into, like if I press this button here, let's see what it does. If I press this button down here, it puts us into presentation mode. And all right, now what happens next? If I press the next arrow, it's going to walk us through so I just press the next arrow and it just takes you through the different nodes. Oh, that's kind of nice. That's kind of nice. It just nodes us all over the place. It's a little bit smoother and it highlights the points. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm just clicking it. Yeah, I'm just clicking the mouse right now. Yeah, that's pretty neat. Okay, so see, yeah, it's good stuff. And the newsletter's a lot of fun, and that gets delivered to the inbox every day. And so thanks for the feedback on that, Indoctrination. I agree. So let's exit out of the presentation mode. Yeah, all right. Fancy. All right. So Indoctrination, thanks for the heads up on that. And enjoy. Hopefully you land some serious sales, or you close that business, or you solve that problem using the mind map. We got KXFMX says, Rob, I've searched as much as possible, but I can't find, cannot find an answer for this one. I remember watching another legal program, and they said that there was no law that protects information from becoming public on under investigation status. Even Garland said it was a tradition and custom of the DOJ. That being said, how can this excuse be used as a blanket pseudo gag order? So I think you're probably talking about like disclosure rules and stuff like that. I think what you'd find if you do some investigation into this is that they'll tuck it into like due process. That it's in order to protect the sanctity of the investigation. So, or the procedure in court, rather the judicial process, since we're in court now. And that if the disclosure is revealed, that it will usurp the role of the courts. So the way I think about it, it's like the courts establishing the rules for the courts. So if you're looking for a statute or something like that, you probably are in the wrong spot. You're probably going to find some case law about this somewhere. But it's also complicated because it's also individual by state. We're talking about federal levels, we're talking about local rules, we're talking about state rules. It's a complicated field, which is probably why you're not finding something that's like a uniform answer. If you're looking for what law keeps stuff from becoming public in a criminal case, I don't think you're going to find something for that. It's going to be this kind of this penumbra, this umbrella of all these laws cobbled together that are then used by the courts to protect the process of the court. I'm going to think about this one though at KXFMX. I'm going to see if this comment might jar something loose, and I might have a better answer for you tomorrow. Trust2Kids says, thanks for another great stream, Rob. I saw Kirby's lips moving, but I was hearing KJP. It's easy to do that because they both say nothing. Although he says a little bit more than her, but not much. So they're almost interchangeable, like fungible objects. It's a good comment. Trust2Kids over on Rumble. We got Salty Sarge says, Rich Men of North Richmond. Rich Men North of Richmond. A song for our times on YouTube and X. Radio WV on YouTube. It's a good recommendation. Rich Men North of Richmond. Apparently it's a song on YouTube. I've not heard it. But thanks for the suggestion. Salty Sarge in the house. Curtis Bartles here says the government has no standing over we the people, and it's in the Constitution. Commie drama from Curtis Bartle. Well, we do have powers as the people, and they are currently usurping them hand over fist, Curtis. So thanks for being here. We appreciate your support. NY, the good doctor, says, with every new release of evidence against the Biden admin, I feel a surging anxiety. I'm afraid the DOJ largely miscalculated how these Trump indictments would be handled. Since their efforts have not neutralized Trump, I'm worried the DOJ is going to go to the next step of arresting Trump. We might get there. Yeah, I mean, we literally might get there. Especially tomorrow's going to be a big day because tomorrow will be a big day because there will be a protective order, or probably a ruling on a protective order. And if the judge draws a hard line on that, my question will be, what is Trump going to comply? I don't think so. I don't think Trump is going to be muzzled, personally. I hope he's not. And that will escalate things dramatically. Then if Trump breaks the order, what are they going to do? Are they going to lock him up? We'll see. We will see. Hey, we got Jack Mack in the house. Says, is there any legitimacy to a civil grand jury, and how does it work? Not that I'm aware of, but I don't practice. I've never practiced really civil litigation. I can't imagine what that would be for. Is it an option in lieu of the inconsistent application of the law by the DOJ? I hope this isn't a stupid question, LOL. No, I don't think it's a stupid question at all. So a grand jury, there's probably kind of a parallel mechanism in civil law. A grand jury is where the government presents evidence to bring criminal charges. So that wouldn't happen in a civil case. but I'm trying to think like of an analog where you can present, like there are civil analogs where you'll present evidence to somebody in a civil setting and then they'll do something with that. I just can't think of a good example right now. But I guess what you're saying is, I think the crux of your question is there some other way where we can show that the DOJ is being inconsistent, or like, is there another mechanism that they can use? So the way I'm reading this is, right now they're using a criminal grand jury to go after Trump, and they're using that to indict him. Could they do something to prosecute him civilly? I think they could, and they might, right? They might do like an FEC filing or an SEC something, or in a civil law. And that might be something like probably what you're asking about. Like, what happens if the Federal Election Commission brings a civil action against Trump, right? That would be a non-criminal thing, but it would be a different entity, and it'd be a whole different can of worms. And so you might have seen stuff like that with like the SEC bringing a Wells notice, like they file almost kind of like a grand jury indictment notice, like an information, where they'll send in a Wells notice to say, Coinbase, you're going to be in trouble if you don't do this thing. So it's a good question. I don't have a great answer for it because it's kind of a different domain. It's an entirely different domain, and there are mechanisms surely that are the same, but it's just a different, it's a different process. So thanks, Jack. I appreciate the question. It's a good one. I had to twist myself up on that one a little bit, and I appreciate it. We got Tree Bark says, great show, Rob. Thank you, Tree Bark. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being a Locals member. Incredible. We got CFRBW says, each state created the federal government and has the rights to keep the federal government going. That's why the House of Representatives has the power of the purse, because the House represents us. From CFRBW in the House. And the states are certainly we're a party to the founding, no doubt about it, signed off on the Constitution. Indeed. We got Tony Hay says, I love the chat, I love your channel, I love the discussion, but we need solutions. Any suggestions? Well, yeah, like policy suggestions? Yeah, I've got a lot of policy suggestions. We'll have to dig into those another time. But I think that, truthfully, I think the solution is to stay engaged, stay healthy, build your skill stacks. And Tony, we talked a little bit about this morning on our members only stream. So if you missed that this morning and you're a member, check that out. Because we talked about this. Like, we have to be healthy, we have to be well, we have to stay engaged, we can't be depressed, we can't be angry at our fellow citizens, we can't become bitter and toxic and, cancerous in our minds. We've got to be healthy and well, and we've got to stay energized and connected and loving and of service and all of those things, because this is a long arc. If we can't maintain that self-care, then we will be defeated. We will be separated. We will turn against each other. And so this is very, very important. If you're asking if I could, wave a magic wand and pass a bunch of policies and stuff, really what I would probably do is get rid of a lot of what we've got and just go back to, revert back to the basics. The basics are what made this country great. And so it's a return to the basics is the short answer on that one. But hang in there, Tony. Hey, I know things are frustrating out there. Indoctrination says, your guess as to what happens if they incarcerate Trump? I think there will be pretty big problems. I don't know what will happen. I think that, well, first of all, I don't know that they would get to that point, like that they would actually. So the way that this would go would be they would issue an order. So tomorrow there will be a protective order. Trump will violate that. The government will request sanctions. The judge will issue an order to show cause. Trump's lawyers will show up there, probably Trump too. There will be a reprimand. At that moment, Trump could be taken into custody or not. My guess is would not. And the judge would just, remind, like this is how it would normally go. The judge would remind him, don't do that again. If he did it again, then there would be another sanction, right? She could order him remanded to custody. Now, I don't think that they can actually physically incarcerate Trump, is the point. I think the Secret Service, even if he is convicted, because of the Secret Service protection that he gets, I don't think that they would physically lock him up. So the judge, in other words, might order him to be locked at Mar-a-Lago or something. You're on home detention. Then the next question is, what happens if that happens? Are there, protests? Are there, civil disobedience? Do people stop paying their taxes or something like that? Now, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that, what is the reaction from the country? Do people stop driving into work? Do people stop trucking? Do people stop, delivering goods and services to certain cities or states or DC or something? Who knows? But I don't think he'll actually be physically incarcerated. That would be a very difficult thing to do. If they did that, the whole playbook would be gone. Like if he's actually physically in custody, your guess is as good as mine. I don't want that to happen at all. I think it would be a bad thing. We have, all right, another one from NY says, a hard line or a bad ruling would hasten this pressure cooker breaking. Are the Dems ready to jail Trump supporters for peacefully protesting? Yes, they're already doing it. And the rank and file DOJ prepared to be a part of the wholesale trashing of the Constitution? I think not. Too much is in the public domain about the Biden and his bribery. In fact, the representatives who knowingly pressed impeachment based on lies are guilty of the coup and insurrection. Jack Smith's DC indictment is truly a double-edged sword. And good comment on that one, because I think you're right. I don't think they really know what they are doing here. All right, we're going to take a quick look at Twitter, at the X, before we wrap it up. It's going to be quick because we're tight on time. But let's see who is over here and give a couple quick shout outs. Oh, that's perfect. Nobody's watching anyways. Nobody's even on Twitter. We've got one viewer there. All right, nobody's even there. So not a big deal. We got Danny McWilliams. We got V says, man, the elections were certainly fortified. They even had guns. Fred says, why are we only now hearing about the Michigan fraud 3 years later? Because somebody finally leaked it out. V says, hey, we've got 18 viewers on here, baby. That's good stuff. We love 18 viewers. We're not back down to one, it looks like. Feline Fun says, I thought Trump was going to request a change of venue and ask the judge to recuse. Did that not happen? Not yet. I'm sure it will. I'm sure all of those will come. They don't even have discovery yet. They don't even have the grand jury transcripts yet. So they don't even know what the charges are, really. I mean, they know what the charges are, but not the underpinnings. Spud says, Robert, Hunter would name his shell companies after lakes in central New York, and Owasco is one of them. His mother was from this location to match the horrendous tattoo on the Finger Lakes on his back. I did see that. We got Maids is over there and other friends over on the X, and we want to shout out all of our friends on the X, which is a very fun place for us to follow. All right, but my friends, that is it for us on the day. One more reminder to check out robertgovea.com. We are going over to our members only after party at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We'd love to see you there. Don't forget to grab your Field of Greens at fieldofgreens.com, saving 15% off with code Robert when you check out. Big shout outs to our mods and meme smiths, Vientikis Prime, K-Bean, Just Cause in the house, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, we got Zulu, Beyond Geo Stars, Zach Nichols is here, John Allen, Janek, Dog Digger, Donut Mind Me, and John McGarvey, along with Geegum Geegum, Sleepy Dog Lee, and Nathan, N810, all in the house. And we appreciate everybody joining us here on this lovely Thursday. We will be back here tomorrow on a Friday. It's going to be a busy one. We have the protective order hearing on the Trump J6 case out of the DC circuit. We might have a George Allen Kelly update. We'll see. The Arizona rancher currently facing murder indictment. And there will be a lot more to get to. And so, my friends, I hope to see you right back here tomorrow so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.